The spring transfer window closed just under a week ago, and there were a few names from Iowa State that squeaked in just before that door was shut. We need to talk about who it was and what that means for Iowa State today on Locked On Cyclones.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to you for being here every single day and making this your first watch or listen of the day. I appreciate it more than you know. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcasting platform, be sure to hit subscribe so we can prove once and for all that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Today, we are talking about a few Iowa State transfers that I have not yet touched on and what that means for the team. How does that affect obviously the full roster moving forward? Then in the second segment, we're going to talk about a basketball ranking that came out, obviously way too early, but I still think Iowa State is getting disrespected. We'll take a look at that list. And then finally, we're going to take a look at transfers in the Big 12 right now. The window is closed. Yes, players can't enter, but players can commit still to other schools that are already in the portal. Where does Iowa State kind of square up against these other teams in the Big 12? And is it troublesome? We'll cover that. Can't wait to get to that and more. But first, this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. All right, so let's dive into the portal and a few of the names that we have not yet talked about, because I was surprised to see how many had kind of slipped under my radar. So I don't know if you saw them either. Let's just kind of shout them out here first. Blaine Sundquist, offensive lineman, redshirt freshman, entered the portal. All of these guys were, the portal closed on the 25th. They all entered, I believe, after the 22nd. So 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th, right in that range, right before it closed. Blaine Sundquist from the line, a freshman, or a redshirt freshman, rather. Charlie Welpley, a running back, that was a redshirt freshman as well. Then we have a pair of redshirt sophomores, Jonathan Vandewale, a wide receiver, and Matthew Bess, a defensive back. Both, like I said, redshirt sophomores. So what does this mean? Well, for one, remember we talked about Matt Campbell kind of not trimming down the roster, but definitely taking the player's best interest in mind and letting them know, like, hey, this is something we might be staring down, just so you know kind of where you're at. And so for these positions, right, we got one on the line, one at the running back, one at the wide receiver, and one at the defensive back. I think it makes sense. I do. You know, obviously the line is a place that Matt Campbell talked very highly of. I was kind of surprised to see how highly he spoke of them. But that's a spot that he was like, hey, this group is very good. And we had some incoming transfers there as well, kind of right around that same age range as Blaine Sundquist at that redshirt freshman position. So that one doesn't really surprise me. Charlie Welpley, the running back position, young running back room right now, relatively, with Hansen and Sama. And then some other guys that stood out, obviously, Matt Campbell mentioned by name, River Peppers. And, you know, that's already three. Then you're looking at what does playing time look like? Because we're probably going to see Hansen and Sama for another year. And then River Peppers as a true freshman, what does that look like down the road? Charlie Welpley hitting the portal, wants to test the waters elsewhere. Jonathan Vandewale, wide receiver. I think that wide receiver room is really interesting. Obviously, we saw the departure of Isaiah Alston. I believe that was on the 17th. And that one I was a little surprised by. I thought Alston could make a difference for this team this year. And, you know, in my conversation on KXNO, there was an element of maybe this is a good thing. And I do kind of agree with that, because if anything, that's proving like the guys at the top are the guys at the top. You've got Chase Sowell and Xavier Townsend. And then Eli Green, a name that I was kind of looking at potentially. Brett Eskelson keeps coming up in conversations. That's already four. Then you factor in the running game and their ability to kind of seep into the passing game, maybe some streaks up the field, maybe some kind of bubble routes, swing passes, if you will. That's already another target, potentially two, depending on the set you're running. And then the tight ends, something that we saw kind of utilized at the end of last year for sure. And with more guys back healthy, I mean, Bramer, Alexander, obviously the impact that I'm blanking. It's Burkle, Gabe Burkle had last year. You can't deny that. So if we're running a lot of like maybe two tight end sets with two wide receivers and a running back, a guy like Welpley, or excuse me, like Vandeweghe might find himself 9-10 on the depth chart there. And I don't blame him at all for trying to find playing time elsewhere and get some tape out. Matthew Bess at the defensive back position, not super in line with what I've kind of accustomed this roster to be. That's probably not the right word, but the defensive back position is one that I feel like is relatively wide open. Jontez Williams, a name that keeps coming up. Benny Ngoye, another name that keeps coming up. And there's a lot of hope around Ngoye just with his transfer from wide receiver to DB. And Campbell talked about him playing so much DB in high school. Like, the transfer isn't going to be super brand new or anything wild. So we are kind of having high expectations for Benny Ngoye. And then just, I mean, looking at the rest of the list here, I'm not necessarily blown away. Obviously, the transfer in Trey Bell obviously stands out, but it's a pretty big room. Maybe that goes into this as a redshirt sophomore. Not necessarily the youngest guy in the room. Got a handful of redshirt freshmen in there. This one kind of shocked me, but maybe he just saw the writing on the wall. And that's what I'm going with here is those positions, lineman, running back, wide receiver, and defensive back, very pivotal to programs. And if that's where the transfers are coming from, like, you're never really, we did see a transfer from the quarterback room in JJ Cole. And I'm not too shocked by that because it's like Rocco's the guy, right? We know that. But it's a smaller room. So I'm not expecting a bunch of quarterback transfers. It's going to be the bigger rooms that are going to see a little bit more thinning out. It only makes sense. But nonetheless, like, those rooms, if those are the people that are like, all right, we've kind of got people at the top. I don't know if I'm going to be able to fight my way into that starting role or even to that 2-3. Do I want to be a 2 or a 3? That's going to go into this decision as well as the money deal. I get that as well. But if these are the positions that people are leaving, that makes me feel kind of confident that the linemen are really the legit thing that Matt Campbell says they are. Probably hold my tongue a little bit there. But like, they got to be dudes. They got to be dogs out there because they're not just pass protecting. No, they're also run blocking. And basically every play, quote unquote, goes through the offensive line. Even if it isn't between the tackles, they're the ones providing time for the pass to get out or sweeping and creating that kind of, maybe with a pull, that edge to get around the outside. Then you've obviously got to have wide receivers block as well. But that line, obviously, everybody knows you win games in the trenches. Like, that is just a fact of the matter. And so if the line is good as it's advertised to be, this departure doesn't really surprise me. And I think it's actually maybe a good sign. Now, obviously, I will say you never want to see guys leaving the program. I wish we could have 3,000 guys on the roster. And everybody could be a Cyclone. And all these guys will be Cyclones for life as well. Like, that's just how it works. Once a Cyclone, always a Cyclone. But at the same time, we have to look at the reality of, like, this is where they're leaving from. And I think that the running back room is another one that, yes, there is an established set right now with Sama and Hansen. And Peppers kind of making the list as far as Campbell's kind of attention stood out to me. And so I wonder, if maybe those two that played a lot last year in Sama and Hansen have taken that step, and Peppers could be moving into that third kind of guy rotation, potentially getting a fair amount of snaps, maybe early downs or whatever the case might be. I don't know for sure where he'll play, if he will play, but at least in the future, if he's turning heads now, that's a good sign for next year or 2 years from now, when we probably won't have Hansen and Sama. And so maybe that's why I feel like that's a good sign, at least of the future, if not for the present. At wide receiver, like I said, I think it makes sense from a depth chart standpoint. Like, you're probably not going to be that 2 or that 3 right now. And then the DB in Bess, it doesn't make as much sense, like I said, just as far as the other 3. But I do think that's a good sign because we have kind of been like, well, this DB room, or at least I have been like, that's my main concern. And if it feels like it's not completely wide open, where Matthew Bess is like, I feel like I can snag a starting spot, you kind of got to hear that a little bit and realize that maybe that is an element of realizing that there is maybe some tiers, right? We've got these guys, we got these guys, we got these guys, which is where you kind of want to be going into the summer. And then you can obviously go from there. let's pivot away from football and talk about some basketball. I know we're all missing the season and kind of mourning what it was. We're diving into a way too early ranking from John Rustin right after this. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to go. Dive into hundreds of premium titles, including EA Sports Football 25 to Call of Duty, as easily as you stream your favorite shows. Me personally, I have an Xbox already, but the element of travel that the 4K stick provides is second to none. I can play almost anywhere. It's really very, very important to me personally. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including the Fire TV Stick 4K second gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max first and second gen, and Fire TV Cube third gen. So going from football to basketball doesn't make a ton of sense right now, but John Rothstein is releasing this current top 25 really early, really early. April 29th, this came out. And Iowa State coming in way lower than I thought they would at 13. But also let's just go through this a little bit. You got Houston at 1. I feel like that makes sense. Florida coming in at 17. That's something. That is certainly a bit of a drop from the champions there. But maybe, okay, let's kind of look past that. I feel like immediately I've got questions. Like seeing Florida at 17, Houston at 1 doesn't necessarily shock me, especially with what they've done in the portal and where they were last year, just how good they were. Like that makes sense. I have no gripe with Houston at 1, but putting Florida at 17 is kind of wild. You put Purdue at 2. A lot of people think Purdue should be 1. This is still way too early, and I think arguing between 2 and 1 right now is like kind of pointless. So going to leave that alone. This one, though, does stand out to me. We have St. John's at 3. Houston, Purdue, St. John's. I don't know if this is just way too much faith in Pitino. He did mention that they had an unbelievable transfer portal, and he kind of talked about, and this is the element of trusting Pitino more than I think maybe we should. He talked about just how much was accomplished by St. John's this last year in comparison to the last, 20 years or whatever. And I get that. But where did St. John's go in the tournament, right? Like the Big East, I hate to say it, it's not the Big 12. It's not the SEC. It's not the Big 10. It's not the ACC. And to be completely honest, I don't even know what those conferences are anymore with conference realignment and NIL. It doesn't feel like it's the same as it's ever been. And that's not to say that the Big East won't be a problem, because we know that they will. We've talked so much about with RevShare, how they're going to be able to kind of exploit the element of not having to allocate as many funds to a football program. We've talked about that. I think that's very, very real. And also, we've seen success from the Big East. What has UConn done? What has Villanova done? Even teams like Creighton or Seton Hall, who hasn't done too much recently. But St. John's in that conference doesn't mean that they're like, it's not like picking just some random conference off the face of the earth and being like, well, they're not in the Power Four, so they're probably not going to succeed. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm just surprised to see them at 3 after the performance they put out on the whole thing last year in the tournament. On top of, okay, I agree. All right. Like I said, very early here, but that's going to be one of my points here for Iowa State being at 13. UCLA, BYU, UConn, 4, 5, 6. BYU, very good. Returned a lot of guys and also got some big names in the transfer portal for sure. UConn, UConn's always going to be UConn. Ranking them at 6 feels a little high to me, but at the end of the day, like, I feel like you have to rank them a little higher than they probably are just because it is UConn. And there's so many examples of like, this statistic is true for the last 180 years of college basketball, except for 3 teams, all of them being UConn. And it's like, Okay, I get that as well. So let's move on. We got Michigan, Duke, Texas Tech at 7, 8, 9. Texas Tech, obviously Big 12 school. We know just how good they were, can be. No gripe with Texas Tech. Duke losing a bunch of guys. That's an interesting situation with guys coming in on 1 year, out right away. That's a program that I feel like you might have to take year to year, and ranking them at 8 feels a little high. Michigan, unfortunately, I just don't know a ton about. Arkansas, a team that kind of shocked everybody this year as the 10 seed. At 10 in this ranking. I don't necessarily hate it by any means. Then you've got Arizona and Kentucky ahead of Iowa State. Arizona, very good. I don't know if they're better than Iowa State. In Kentucky, just not quite what they've been in the past. That being said, this list has a lot of issues, like for sure. I think putting Florida at 17, wild. St. John's at 3, okay, interesting. Duke, a little higher than I probably think they should be. And some other teams in here as well. Like I just kind of ran through it. Me personally, based on this list, I think, I think Iowa State has to be at least 10. I think that they're definitely, I don't know why St. John's is at 3. And maybe I'm going to be way wrong on this. I've been wrong on this in the past. When St. John's got brought up to me, it would have been like October, November of last year. We kind of laughed. We were like, that's a crazy pick. And then it ended up being like St. John's was legit. They were ranked a 2 seed in that tournament and unfortunately unraveled, just couldn't make a shot. That was kind of the nature of that team, though. Nonetheless, I just feel like putting them at 3 right now feels a little bit high. I get that they have Patino. I get that they had a good transfer portal, but 3, maybe they don't drop below 10, maybe. But with their movement, that's going to move other people around as well. UCLA, a team that I don't think should be at 4. Their coach, amazing. Definitely always hot on the mic, but I don't know how much does that really translate to the court. I would probably move Arizona below, Kentucky below, because what does Iowa State have, right? A lot of returners. You're missing Jones and Gilbert for sure. Like those are going to be key positions missed for sure. But you've got Jefferson coming back, Heisey, Momchilovic, Lipsy. This core that's coming back is strong, very strong. And then you look at the transfers that are coming in, and I am very high on Mason Williams and what he can do for this team. And some of the freshmen that are coming in, you never know with a freshman. Is it going to hit right away? Is it going to take a few years? Do they transfer out before they make an impact? Or do they come in absolutely blazing hot and they're the next Cooper Flag? Like, you don't know for sure because we saw this last year with all I can think of is Dominicus and Plata, but just transferred to Pitt. I can't think of his name. I apologize. But like it's kind of hit or miss. But Plata is a guy that I really think could be a huge impact for this team. A little bit older, played some professional ball. I think it'll translate. And the Big 12 is a tough place to play. I think throughout the course of the season, he'll acclimatize, if you will, partial acclimatize, and become a full-blown legit player by the end of the year. And obviously, Otts is going to develop all of these guys. Now, is Iowa State as strong as it was at the end of the year last year? Probably not. No, I think that's reasonable to say. But before the season, would you say that Iowa State was capable of what they were doing in their peak? I don't think you'd say that either. Now, granted, their peak and the end of the year, very different. A lot of injuries in there, fatigue, obviously. And feels like momentum was a huge part of that season. But I think Iowa State has the ability to wow. And that is what sets them apart, is that they can come into this season ranked 13th and find themselves back at 2 in the AP poll by December. Like they really could, especially with the way that Otts handles the non-con, just absolutely obliterating teams, like just stepping on their throats and running up the score. Now, that's a tough one too, because it's like, does that make you good? Does it? Actually, does that maybe even hurt? We're not getting into philosophy, but just from the way that the AP poll views that, obviously a dominant win over a non-conference schedule opponent, a non-power 4 team or whatever the case might be, is going to be viewed a little bit better than like a squeaking by, So I get it. I really do. And I think it affects seeding down the line. I think it's a smart play, but it is worth at least mentioning. Nonetheless, wrap this all up, put a bow on it. I think Iowa State should at least be in the top 10 here just because of their potential, but I understand you can't rank on potential, but also then why is St. John's at 3? So let's play that game fair and square. I think Iowa State squeaks into the top 10 there. Speaking of top 10, I don't know if Iowa State is in the top 10 in transfer portal rankings this year, at least in the Big 12, excuse me. We're going to have to talk about everyone else in the Big 12 and should Iowa State be scared coming up right after this. Ever check into your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Way too much. Now I budget smarter and save more. And my favorite, managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. The transfer portal is something of a topic of conversation. I think that's a good way to put it right now, at least with guys moving around. The portal is closed, but here at Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, guys still committing to other schools, slightly alarming. Slightly. Now, I talked with Drake about this the other day. Obviously, Drake Toll, host of the number one Big 12 podcast in the entire world, I believe. So shout out to him. He probably knows what he's talking about. But my view on this is Iowa State's going to be fine. I do think that they will be okay. But there is something to be said of these other schools. Colorado stood out to me. I believe I just looked up like Iowa State, and Colorado kept popping up. And I was like, okay, well, let's look at the Colorado portal. Boom, bam, pow. Okay, we are okay. So I pulled up the Big 12 rankings for, this is 24/7 sports rankings, and Texas Tech is ranked 1, Colorado, Houston, West Virginia, Oklahoma State. Now, take West Virginia with a grain of salt because I'm pretty sure that they wiped their entire roster. So when you add in 39 3-stars, that's going to bump your total points up, but that doesn't really you're looking at a whole new roster. So maybe they'll be very, very, very good, but also it's like maybe not. I don't know based on there's no real previous thing to go off of here. So West Virginia, I'm taking with a grain of salt. OSU at 5, Kansas at 6. Let's go through the whole thing. UCF at 7, Utah at 8, Baylor at 9, Cincinnati at 10. Now we're into the real double digits here. TCU at 11, Arizona at 12, Arizona State at 13, Kansas State at 14. With 16 teams in the Big 12, Iowa State comes in at 15. Right ahead of BYU at 16, ranked 20 points. Not very many points there. Only 8 3-stars committed. Iowa State with 8 commits total as well, but they were able to sneak in a 4-star. Huge, of course, but that's going to put them up over BYU. So really the same amount of commits, only 8 commits from Iowa State and BYU, and these top commits, obviously West Virginia, like I mentioned, at 44 because they kind of redid their whole roster. But Colorado and Houston both with 26. 13 4-stars, for Texas Tech, Colorado with 3, and nobody else with more than 2 obviously stands out. And there were a few names that I wrote down just because they were the most recent ones. Defensive back from Kansas State headed to Colorado, Noah King. From Incarnate Ward to Kalen Taylor, the running back, had 1,000 all-purpose yards last year. I wonder if we're looking at maybe the development of another Travis Hunter, but let's not get too far ahead of ourselves here. And Hakeem Williams from FSU, a wide receiver, just 3 that immediately popped up. And I was like, okay, well, is Colorado going to be good? Because my understanding was that Colorado would get worse, and they weren't that good. They were pretty good. They were in contention for the Big 12 title last year with, I don't even know, maybe 1 week to go. I think they were in it. It really came down to that BYU game, I'm pretty sure. And nonetheless, though, I didn't think they were that good. I thought they were, the record didn't indicate what they were on the field. And I thought with the loss, obviously, of Shedeur and Travis Hunter, amongst others, through the portal and whatnot, that they would take a step back. But now I don't know if that's the case. I really don't. Looking at Iowa State, of course, I'm not going to run through every single guy that comes into Iowa State, but Chase Sowell, the 4-star that I mentioned there, a lot of really solid 3-stars. And that's where Iowa State excels, is developing these 3-stars into legit talent. We saw, obviously, I think it was 9 Iowa State players go to the NFL. I don't know how many of them were 3 stars, 2 stars, 1 star, 0 stars, but I bet most of them were 3 stars or lower, as opposed to a 4 or a 5-star. That's just what Iowa State is known for. So I'm not worried. And the other reason I'm not worried, which I said with Drake, is I don't think Iowa State needed to really fill any holes. Wide receiver got done in the fall with Sowell and Townsend, kind of refilling those. And then we got so many guys back at the tight end position. I think we've kind of got our wide receiver game figured out. I do think Eli Green, like I mentioned in the first segment, is going to be solid. And so that was kind of the major, like you're losing a ton of production from Higgins and Knoll. Like, I think we can all agree on that. Over 2,200 yards, maybe even 23. I didn't look at the tens, but I think it might be close to 2,300 yards on offense. That's a big hole to fill. It really is. But you get that done in the fall. Now what? And this does include the fall, these rankings. But what else do you need to do? Like, we made some moves on the line. We made some moves on the defensive side of things. And I think a name that nobody has really been talking about is from Yale, Tomatoa McDonough. I really think that he could make a major impact for this team. A 3-star technically, but a very good 3-star at that, in my opinion. Ranked at 0.84, which, what does that mean? I guess 0.9 something. 9.3 is probably how you get to that 4-star. I feel like 9.3 is pretty high. It's an A. But that's what Sowell is ranked, and he's a 4-star. So all this to say, yes, there are other teams in the Big 12 that are making big additions, and I think it's worth looking at them. I am doing this segment to put awareness out. Like, this other teams are still here to play. Like, they are still out here making moves, trying to make their team better, which only makes sense. But if we don't actually pinpoint it, it feels like it's just like, okay, it's going on behind closed doors, and then we're a little surprised when the fall comes around. And so, obviously, Texas Tech, Colorado, Houston stand out to me. I don't think West Virginia is in that same boat. And then what is Kansas going to do? What is UCF going to do? What is Utah? Anything below 9 or 10, I'm not too worried about. I don't know a ton about. Arizona State is going to show up lower just because of the amount of guys that they retained. They did get both the Helton twins from us at Iowa State, and so that's worth mentioning. Very good players there. At least there were very good things to be said about them from the Iowa State coaches. But I'm not too worried. Like, there are teams out there making moves, and Texas Tech was a team that beat us last year, and it appears like maybe only got better with all these additions. But at the same time, stars are just stars on a profile. They don't show what exactly is going to happen in a game between the painted lines, And so that goes for both Texas Tech and Colorado and for Iowa State. The 3 stars can well outperform a 5-star. Or our 4 stars, well, I guess 1 4-star, so I'm not going to single him out, but maybe the 3 stars perform like 0 stars. Like, the stars my point is the stars don't do anything. It's not like the more stars you have, you start with that many points. If you've got an average of 3 stars across your offense, you don't start with a field goal. You don't total them all up and start the game with 26 points to the other team's 40. That's just not how it works. So I'm not too worried about the stars. I'm not too worried about the size of Iowa State's class, because I didn't think Iowa State needed to fill a bunch of holes. These other schools, though, it's worth at least talking about and at least mentioning, like, they are making moves, and they're going to be coming for Arizona State and Iowa State, because Arizona State, the champion, and Iowa State, the runner-up. And Iowa State, with the same quarterback, obviously looking to make a step forward, I think they can. But these teams are going to be gunning for them. And Kansas State will be first, obviously, in week 0. Not super great in the transfer portal, at least from a numbers perspective. I understand. I know what I just said. But from the ranking coming in at 14, at least I'm not like too worried from a numbers perspective there. We'll see what happens. Kansas State still very good. Farmageddon, overseas, anything can happen. All right, anything can happen. You know what I say about rivalry games. Kansas State always provides a good one. Can't wait to see it. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be a great season. But I'm not worried, but it's worth mentioning. That's where I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you for making it till this point in the episode. If you haven't subscribed, be sure to do so. We can prove it's a Cyclone state that way. Until next time, Cyclone fans, sayonara.